E and I were traveling to Toronto, and as we came through the customs and we continued to drive on, we both looked up in the sky and saw the same thing. The clouds in the form of an angel, or what we perceive an angel to be. And I'm like, did you see that? Well, I'm driving and I saw it. And she's like, did you see it? I'm like, the angel? She's like, yeah. So we both had the same pareidolia. We both saw an angel in the clouds.
But do you know what angels look like?
That's what I said, what we perceive
Oh,
as angels.
okay, okay. Listen,
You missed the word perceive, didn't you? I know who I'm
I
talking
heard
to.
perceive. I heard perceive. I'm just asking the question. Do you know what angels look like? Yeah, if you know what angels
Perceive.
look like, you know you
Perceive.
perceive. Yeah, angels comes in many different forms. You know, you could even look at me and you could
Don't
call
we
me an
know it?
angel.
Oh boy.
Eh,
All right, let's just leave that
Listen,
alone.
ladies and gentlemen, we're about to bring our guest in, and we're so happy that you are here with us. So I'm going to turn it over to Faye T, who's going to do the introductions. Go ahead, Faye T.
So we want to welcome Leanne Arnold, and I'm going to just read just a little bit of what she shared about who she is. Welcome, welcome. So here we go. For over 15 years, Leanne Arnold has worked in many positions within the Caribbean community. She has led many anti racism campaigns as well as community and farm worker events and concerts. Leanne has rallied together with government and media to stand up and speak for Jamaican and offshore workers' rights. Knowledgeable and experienced in the government farming program and working with hundreds of offshore workers across Canada, Leanne has become a reputable advocate, solution based representative for thousands of farm workers across Canada. Working closely with the farm and farm workers community, she is contracted sorry, by businesses as a worker support manager to ensure that non-work related issues including housing, settlement, community resource, cultural appropriate needs are met for employees in Canada. As a human rights advocate, Leanne has stood in unity with hundreds of workers in need to find solutions. As the director of Norfolk Community in Action, Leanne organizes community events which seeks to genuinely include all cultures to build community. Welcome, welcome, Leanne Arnold, to our program this morning. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here this morning. Thank you so much. I was driving hoping to get to one of the farms that I do lots of work with, and I was trying. I almost made it, but I had to stop for gas. But I wanted to be in the presence of the farm, just because it's a really good farm, and I just wanted to kind of be on that place while we were talking. So I'm almost there. So I'll keep driving, but I can talk as I'm driving because my phone is stable up there. So good morning to everybody.
Good morning to you too.
Morning.
Thank you so much for being with us. Again, this is Faye T and myself, Claremont. We spoke just about over 2 weeks ago, I think it is. Yeah, just about two
Yeah.
weeks ago. And we talked.
Mhm.
I was listening to you give your speech when you were at the Wien Community Center event that they had for the Emancipation Day. And you know, I heard what you said. I said, we got to get you on air here with us. First of all, let me ask you this question: what was the drawing power that got you involved in this kind of work?
So I've been wondering about the same thing, and the only answer that I can give you, this is a whole 100% honest answer, is God. That's it. It's God
Amen.
alone. Because you know, when I when I'm in, how do I say this? The movements that God has made in my life, he literally picks me up and puts me there. He puts me in those positions, and even before I write my speeches, or I write information for writing, like whenever I'm in a situation where I need to speak on behalf or represent, I literally pray. For example, the speech at that, it was a great event, by the way. I loved the vibe there. That was so powerful to be in the presence of everybody there. It was awesome. that speech, when I was only maybe like a week away from writing it, I sat down to do it because I said, okay, gosh, it's a last minute thing, but I'm going to do this. I have a week. I sat down to write it and I was like, no, it's not time yet. It's not time. And I literally wrote it that morning because that was when God said, this is where when it comes. And I just have faith in him like that. And so when I'm doing events, or when I'm representing, and when I say that, I mean an event could be anything from doing a concert in the reggae community for the farm workers, a sports day event, or it could also mean when I'm in the process of working on some really serious issues with farm workers that involve having to get Service Canada and the Labor Board involved on really serious things that are happening on the farm. I just have to just I just have to jump on God's shoulder and let him guide me because I don't know. I haven't got a clue.
Listen, I want to go back to a statement you made at the event, and I thought that was quite interesting that you making that statement. Even Faty heard it too. We were like, "Did she just say that?" You said, "I am white with privilege." Why would you say that?
I didn't. Nancy did.
It was Nancy that. Oh, you didn't say that?
No, Nancy said that. Nancy's the immigration consultant. She said that.
Oh, I thought
Yes.
it was you. Oh, my
No,
apologies. My apologies. My humble
no,
apologies. My humble apologies. I was
no,
thinking, I thought that was you, and I'm thinking, wow, that was an interesting statement. So I'm like,
no.
okay, that was Nancy.
That was
Okay.
that was
Okay.
Nancy that says that. That said that. At the same time, I get it why she said that.
Right.
Like I get it, for sure.
Can you explain that?
I mean, I work in a community
Mm-hmm.
that there's it's constantly oppressed, and even though, and I know that 90% of the farms honor their workers, and treat them with dignity and respect, and I know that, but that 10%, that still exists.
Mm.
To be honest, like I was saying in my speech the whole entire time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how can I even stand up and talk about Emancipation Day and in a way like, where some white people would just say, oh, that's in our past and it's done, and still oppressing people. It's just, I get it. I get why people, like,
Mm.
Yeah.
sometimes especially in those situations, where you're like, I'm gonna go up and speak, and I'm gonna, talk about things that I know darn well are happening, that are just wicked, and that are and it is as much slavery in some situations and so much oppression. And
So
here I am standing up as
You
a white woman, never felt it.
So, because I look at it this way, that here it is that you're in an organization that works among the communities of which we'll say it's immigrants, so to speak. Where are some of the places that they come from?
Jamaica, Mexico, Trinidad has a large community, Barbados, small amount of St. Vincent, some from St. Lucia. Those are the majority, more Jamaican. And unfortunately, like I was saying about the first farm worker group that came to Canada, I don't know if you were there at the beginning of my speech where I was talking about that. Did you hear that about, the group that was actually met by a gun in the middle of the night from their farmer?
Yes.
That was from the first year ever of the farm work program. And the liaison just saying, just be quiet, and we'll, if you're not quiet, then you won't be able to support your kids, and they'll shut down the program. And you know and it continues exactly the same way today. There's nothing that's changed.
So,
So, how all of the behaviors that happen on the farm are due to liaison officers not doing their job from Jamaica. And I'm sorry, but that's what it is, because if they were, Jamaicans wouldn't be living in this situation.
so when was the first time this uh what do you say farm workers came? Give us an update of that, because some of our listeners don't know.
Don't know. Okay, I'll give you the story in a nutshell. In 1966, the first plane landed from Jamaica. In that time of industrialization, we couldn't make food enough. We couldn't make anything fast enough. That was the beginning of the greed in the world. And so in that time, there was like mass produced foods, and they couldn't keep up with the demand. And so Jamaica and Canada, the governments came together and launched the first season program. Um, at that time minimum wage was $1.20, and the first group was Jamaicans. They landed here. I live in Norfolk County. It's called the Garden of Ontario here, and we grow almost everything here. 13 people were living in a bunkhouse down the road at a farm called Greet's Farm,
Hmm.
and in the middle of the night, their light bulb went out. I guess somebody went up to get a drink of water, and the light bulb didn't go on. Now, side note to this, I was saying that the minimum wage was $1.20 at that time. The farm workers were brought here and they were making around 80 cents.
Wow.
And
Wow.
there was no standard for living at all. And so there was 13 guys kind of bunched into this little room shack thing. Anyway, light bulb goes off and goes out. So this gentleman, he woke up in the middle of the night, and his name was Clinton, and I think it was Clinton, and he heard his boss out in the yard and having a drink with a friend. So he went out into the dark and he said to the boss, "May we have a light bulb, please?" And the boss gave him the light bulb. He went back to the house, and about a half an hour later, there was a knock on the door in the middle of the night, and there was the drunk farmer with his friend, you know, calling them names and aiming a gun around the room at
Wow.
everybody. So they were terrified. Imagine now 13 men walking down a country road with no electricity in the pitch black in the middle of the night, terrified because their boss was, aiming guns around the room. And the next day, the liaison was notified, and the government officials got involved and did an investigation that lasted for like a day. And then liaison told the guys, just be quiet. Like I said, don't say anything because you might lose your job, or well, you lose your job, the program will shut down, just keep quiet, just suck it up and pretend it didn't happen. And so they did.
Wow.
And
Wow.
now, all of these years later, now you won't find that in a textbook, but you will find it when you research it. It is on the records, it is in the media records and in history, but of course we don't talk about that, right?
Was there any
Wow.
reprimanding for what happened, or it just went away?
None, none, none,
Wow.
none,
Yeah.
none.
So
The farmer was allowed to continue to hire farm workers. There was no disciplinary action, no nothing.
So I would think
Um,
that he continued to terrorize them that way, seeing that nothing was done,
yeah, I don't know from there, but I imagine, I know that some farmers today continue to terrorize. There's a
Mm.
farm right now that has men. I did bring out that foam, and that was from a bunk. I took
mm-hmm,
it the night
Wow.
before. I went to the bunkhouse and I pulled out that horrible piece of foam.
mm-hmm,
I asked one of the guys if I could use a foam from their bed. They said, yeah. I brought it just to show impact of, as
mm-hmm,
we're sleeping, we're these Jamaican workers who are working on the fields, making the farmer's dollar and
Hmm.
providing for our food chain, and sleeping on those mattresses. Now, um, that same farmer calls the guys monkeys, idiots, stupid. I wish you never came in the first place. Why don't you go home? If you're not going to work properly, go home. Um, Constantly harassing them and name calling. And when the guys asked, can we have mattresses? That foam that I had was 7 years old.
yeah, I
There's
saw
Wow.
the form. It's really, it's disgusting. First of all, to look at it,
Yes.
because no normal person would want to sleep on a foam like that for a long period, because that would cause back pains, all kinds of issues for you,
Oh
especially if
yeah.
it's not proper, it's deteriorated, so to speak. Now, what
Yeah.
is the wages that these guys get paid at this, in this modern day?
A minimum wage. So, and but let me show you something.
Mm-hmm,
Since 1966,
mm-hmm.
it was only 3 years ago, 3 years ago, that they started getting minimum wage.
So,
And yeah,
what do you say?
yeah,
So
just
you saying they were still making that
yep,
80 something
less.
cents? Really?
No, not 80 cents, but they were still under the minimum wage,
Under the
federal
minimum
minimum
wage.
wage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
They've always been under minimum wage until 3 years ago. Also, up until just maybe the second year of COVID, first year of COVID. It
Mm-hmm.
was in the first year of COVID. Um, every year that a farm worker comes to Canada, every pay they lose, they lose their money for their EI the same way that we do. It still comes off of their check
Right.
with absolutely zero access to ever using it. There was no way. They still had to pay into it, and there was no access for them.
Does the government
So
know
imagine
this?
paying something. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. It's a government program, right? And so they were losing EI, but then during COVID, something happened where the guys couldn't go home
Mm-hmm.
and women couldn't go home. And I was involved in that first quarantine, where if somebody on the farm got COVID, all of the farm had to be quarantined. So this one that I did had about 83 people on it, I think, and I was in the hotel looking after everybody, making sure, because they were locked in their rooms, right? They weren't
Mm-hmm.
allowed to leave the hotel rooms. And I said, but wait a minute now. They're off work for 2 weeks and they're not sick. They were they were
Right.
just put in there, right? It was the most insane thing. And so myself and another person just said, apply for EI. You've been paying into it, just apply for it. And how can they say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they didn't. And so now they do have access to the same benefits, but they've been
Awesome.
paying it. So it's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. It's also crazy to me that they pay these liaison fees that went up this year, and the liaison will not support them, barely, if
I
that,
just want to
barely.
reiterate to the listeners that we're talking about things that are happening currently in
Yeah,
2023. We're not talking about anything back in 66, 59. We're talking about current 2023. This is what the
yeah,
information we're discussing.
yeah.
My
Now,
goodness.
90% of the farms are great. 90% of the guy, like, I want to say that it's the 10%
Mm-hmm.
that is really, really dirtying up the waters. It's
Mm,
that 10%, but
mm,
it probably would only take 1% of the population of farms to be
mhm.
as crude as they are and as
Right.
disrespectful. Now, some of the things we're talking about, like the wages and things, are government, right? So
Mm,
that in itself, though, is still oppression. I mean, that is oppression, and I don't care how you look at it. You've got people paying into a program that they cannot access, and you have, standards that, by the government with housing quality that is,
mm,
because to be honest, these farms that are passing these inspections, they are so like this one I was talking about, and it's not, it's numerous. I get calls and videos and pictures daily from people all over Canada, but some of them that really stick out, when you have serious bug issues and mice issues and dirt floors and mattresses that are sponges and that kind of a thing, that is getting through health units. And so you have to wonder, like, well, how does that happen? I'm talking about places that we would consider those buildings need to be condemned
Mm-hmm.
to the ground. We wouldn't keep our dogs in them. They're on farms that that
right.
that 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 don't have animals living in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
In some of these cases. And so that to me is oppression at a government level. Now, the Canadian government is doing a much better job at being proactive and making sure that some of these things are happening. And as a matter of fact, it's the Canadian government that offers what's called the vulnerable open work permit for people who have been in abusive situations. So it's the Canadian government who is implementing a lot of these processes and having really, really heavy fines for farmers who continue with this behavior. Service Canada is doing a brilliant job at making sure that these things are being implemented. And yet still there's farmers out there having their guys, men and women, living like this. There's a farm that was in I want to say the province, but it's still an investigation, so I won't. But it's in a different province. Right now, there's about 15 women who came to Ontario that I'm assisting with it. But um, man, they're in some serious trouble. And here locally too, there was a farm last year that had women living in it with no toilets. They had to go beside the barn. I'm telling you, I'm telling you. And now I'm talking a lot. I'm on a rampage here, but you know what it is though. There's also on the same farm,
Mm-hmm.
they have very low growing crops. I won't say what the crops are,
Right. Right.
but they're low. I have to be careful of how I speak
No, no,
about
I
it,
understand
Right,
protecting
that. We
right.
myself.
understand that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. We
Absolutely.
understand that.
Yeah.
for what I do is pretty dangerous for myself. But I go into so there's these low growing crops,
Mm-hmm.
um, and no toilet. And now you're a man on the
Right.
field working from 6 in the morning until 7 or 8 at night. You need to use the washroom. You're drinking water all day and
Right.
whatever. So this farmer, uh, it's crude, but I'll tell you just to give, just because sometimes that's what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is this part really upset me. So you have men who would be using the toilet in the food field. I say food because we eat the food, right?
Right,
And
right,
I'm getting it.
they're out there, they're out there in the field. And the farmer would in this one case, the worker told me that the farmer would yell at him and say, "I don't pay you to sit out there and take a, I
Right.
pay you to work," watching over him. Like, oh my gosh, you know,
wow,
it's
Wow.
horrible.
wow.
Listen, we before we let you go, how
Yeah,
do you protect yourself? Because I mean,
right,
this is a pretty much of, I would say, to the farmers that are not complying to the rules,
right, right.
um, probably see you as a threat.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Dangerous.
Absolutely. So the good farmers want me around.
Hmm.
Nobody wants a dirty industry, but for the bad farmers, because I go on their feet, I go right into their bunk houses at night, and I tell the guys what their rights are. I tell them what is abuse, what is discrimination, what are your rights, and then I give them options, right?
Hmm.
I also report farms, and so it's dangerous what I do. It's like
Mm,
in the old days when you'd have people going onto a farmer's property and talking about what people's human rights are. We're still there.
right.
We're still there. I'm
I
doing it,
know.
doing it,
Wow.
Wow.
and the liaison officers get paid to do this, and like, why are we here? You know what I mean? Like, I just sometimes go like, oh God, why? How is this happening? But again, um, uh, I have to sometimes call the police
Hmm.
and make sure that I'm like, when there's a serious farm, you have people who are so wicked that they actually call people these names and treat them like this and have them living in these conditions. They don't play. So
Right.
I got to take that
Yeah.
very seriously, like so I sometimes have to call the OPP, and I try and I don't want to not talk about what I do. Pastor Steve, I don't know if you know Pastor Steve
Yes,
Green.
I
You
do.
must know Pastor.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, he told me, he said, we God wants us to call out the wicked, and we have to, and I trust in God to protect, but
Hmm.
I have to be very sensible on how I
Hmm.
approach things as well. So yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Wow, what a job you're doing, and we thank God for
I
you.
know.
And we pray that God continue to strengthen you and to give you the wisdom and the
Yeah.
knowledge, as well as
Cover and
health.
protect.
Because I mean, when you go into some of these places, it could be
You
health
don't
a
know what
little
you're
bit
going
when you're
into.
going into.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we just thank God for you, and we want to say thank you so much. We hope that you come again and give us some updates, and
Thank you.
hopefully things get
Yeah.
better than it is, and we have
Yeah.
all farms complying to the rules that they're supposed to comply to.
Truly. Yeah, thank you.
Any
Yeah.
And
last
thank you.
words
Yeah.
before we let you go? That
No,
you
just
want?
thank you for doing what you're doing. That's an important job. Spreading the word of God is what we're all supposed to do, and you do it really well. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all.
Thank you
Really
so
do.
much,
Thank
and
you.
God
Thank
richly
you for
bless
being
you.
here. Yep.
You got it. Have a wonderful day.
You too,
You
blessings.
too. You too.
Bye-bye.
That is Leanne Arnold from she's the director of Norfolk Community in Action Offshore Workers Support Coordinator, and we want to thank her so much for being with us today.
Yes, indeed. We appreciate her doing it because that's that's a